remember a couple of years ago, a friend was asking me for a favor for something. And sort of in doing that favor, which of course I obligingly did, I did send him a GIF. And the GIF was of Cary-Hiroyuki Tagawa as Shang Tsung in Mortal Kombat, repeating that famous line, which has now been immortalized, thanks to, of course, GIFs and meme culture. And that was him saying, "Your soul is mine." He passed away last week, December 4th, I believe, at the age of 75. And I'm doing this retrospective because the thing is that it's a shame. It's a shame that an actor like him went on to be so typecast that we didn't get to see him, his acting chops, him as an actor, until very later in life. And I feel that maybe that's just Hollywood for you. Maybe that's just the industry for you, to be typecast. It definitely speaks volumes about the industry and what it does to actors of, I hate using this phrase, actors of color or sort of people of certain ethnicities. But we're going to speak about, well, I will speak about the one in particular where he shone and where he was where he demonstrated abilities and talent that, again, it's just a shame that they were left so unrealized over I would say the majority of his career. As a Japanese, as a sort of Japanese-born American man, he was invariably going to be cast as, of course, he was never going to be cast as a leading man, right? This is Hollywood for you. Let's be, I mean, to have an Asian leading man, I mean, forget the fact that, while there were many sort of leaps and bounds for African Americans starring as leading actors, or at least in prominent roles throughout, I would say, forget all of the earlier stuff like 30s, 40s and stuff like that. Let's talk about sort of, and it comes to mind like Sidney Poitier and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner and all of those things, and sort of movies from the 50s onwards. But to see or have a leading Asian actor cast in either a prominent role or to even headline a movie, I don't think that happened until when? One can't say Bruce Lee really, because the thing is that most, all of his movies were done sort of in Asia, in Hong Kong, and sort of movies like, Enter the Dragon and all of that were essentially imports, right? So Brandon Lee maybe, and I mean it's good that I mentioned that movie got, for example, so Showdown in Little Tokyo with Brandon Lee, Dolph Lundgren, and of course Cary Tagawa as the villain. I think that's the only time that I can, at least earlier on, my memory fails me if I'm omitting any other examples, but I think that's the only time that I can remember, at least in that period, where somebody slightly ethnic looking, because this was Bruce Lee's son, but of course he was half Asian and half Caucasian. His mother was American, so I can't really remember somebody. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just drawing a blank. In the 80s and even in the 90s. So somebody like Cary Tagawa, who had sort of distinct, handsome Japanese, man, what's it called? Good, sort of deep voice. This man was never going to be cast as either a hero or in a lead role. And so what lasted for, I would say, a good 30, 40 years. I mean, he was typecast mostly as a villain. We saw that Showdown in Little Tokyo, even though it Licensed to Kill. Yes, he was in, The Last Emperor. But I think that was smaller part Tekken, that other movie, Dolph Lundgren, I think in '99. There were just all of these movies, trash movies essentially, in which, unfortunately, Hollywood had typecast this actor, and he, sort of, if that was the means by which he was going to sort of realize his craft, I guess he was. I can't speak for him. I mean, sort of, I haven't read any interviews of him where he's perhaps bemoaned this fact. But at least looking back on his career, we do see that, I mean, how could anyone be at least satisfied with that sort of body of work? Mortal Kombat is, again, he's cast as the villain. But I'm okay at least with having him live on in that sort of memory of not, let's be honest. I mean, it's not like Mortal Kombat was high art, directed by Paul W.S. Anderson. It's, the movie wasn't going to win any Oscars or something like that. But I'm just glad that sort of as a piece of pop culture, this is how his memory will live on. He will always be Shang Tsung. He will always be the one who says, your soul is mine. That, at least, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. And I hope he was okay with that too. But what I want to talk about is his turn as Trade Minister Tagomi in The Man from the High Castle. Philip K. Dick's book of the same name, which was adapted by Amazon. And in it is an alternate history United States, or at least alternate history world, in which the Allies lost, the Axis powers won. Germany and Japan have carved up America, and so it's split into two. There's the Japanese side, there's the Nazi side, and in it, over the course of, I would say, about 4 seasons, I think it was 4, we have this unfolding story in which, if you've read the book, very fine one, of course, by Philip K. Dick, you find that, the two, there's a sort of almost, I wouldn't call it a blending of realities, or a blending, there is this world, this alternate universe, this alternate world exists or coexists with our world. And there's this overlap. And it's a story of how this overlap, that's explored in the book, but also in the movie, that's also in the show, how that happens, but then also how these people, various characters, sort of try and navigate this sort of almost, well, it is a dystopian world. I mean, sort of, if the Nazis won. But where, I mean, this guy, because the thing is, it wasn't just him. There was also the other character, the person who plays the head of the Japanese police. I remember him from, he's, I think, a Filipino actor, and he was in Space Above and Beyond. Another very good turn, a very, very well acted. But it was Tagomi. We often speak of I don't want to sound like the stereotype that it's like, an Oriental restraint of, there being sort of a muted power to people from the Orient, to from Japan, and sort of it comes across in their performances. But at least when it came to Cary Tagawa's performance as Trade Minister Tagomi, there's a quiet sort of presence that this man has. Because here he is one of the most important people in the Japanese government that sort of controls that half of America. And yet he has come to, through his practice of I Ching and a couple of other things, he's come to sort of realize that all is not right with what is going on. And there is these layers that over the course of these seasons, we get to sort of see of this character. We get to see this person start off as somebody who's maybe, I wouldn't say necessarily a cog in the machine, but at least somebody who is just allowing the system to, move along. Well, he essentially is a cog in the machine, but somehow he then evolves into something else. And that is where I feel that an actor like him, who is able to, I think that is his most notable for performance in the last 10 years, before he died. It's such a shame that here's an actor who was capable, and I he had that distinct look. He was wearing, sort of a very 60s, frames, his glasses, black and white, black suit, white shirt, very formal. But it almost comes off as like sort of these Japanese ink drawings where there is restraint, there is minimalism, but then there is so much expression as well. And that's what he was able to display and put on screen for us to see. And again, I come back to this point that it is a shame because here is a man who was capable of so much, and yet his career was almost wasted in playing sort of like, a 2-bit villain. But at least it's just great that he at least got to do that. That we did see a fine performance from this man. So that's Cary Tagawa for you.